Hi, welcome to the Blanche Ely House Lunch with Art lecture series. Today, I will discuss 3 exciting things I learned about the legendary educator, Blanche Ely, straight from the archives that she has in her house. Things that she had saved there. When I studied it, I found 3 things about her that I want to share with you. And one of the things that amused me because it had so many twists of fates in it. One of the things intrigued me because it was far from ordinary ideas I heard about education and sports. And the last astonished me because it was so different from what I had heard about Black schools in the South. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Derek Davis. I'm the curator consultant for the Blanche Ely House. For more than 25 years, I was immersed in Black history in South Florida. Before I retired in 2017, I had been the curator of the Old Dillard Museum for 10 years. That's an African-American history schoolhouse on the National Register of Historic Places. Prior to that, I was the head of exhibits and programs at the African-American Research Library and Culture Center. Now, at that time, it was one of only 3 research libraries in all of America that were devoted to African-American history. In addition to that, for 9 years, I was the executive director of an organization called the Black Archives History and Research Foundation of South Florida. So in those years, Blanche Ely's name came up many times from many different sources. So I was quite surprised to find that there was much more to learn about her from the photographs and documents that she had in her home, which is now a museum. The first thing I'm going to talk about is something that amused me in the records. In a speech that she gave in 1990, she mentioned that she got her job as principal at Pompano because a man didn't want the job. She didn't mention the name of the man, but she said that he didn't want to go out into that country area. He was afraid to go out there. So Blanche stepped up and became the principal. She was Blanche General then. She hadn't got married yet, so she wasn't Ely. She was supposed to be a 6th grade teacher at Fort Lauderdale Colored School. That means she was supposed to be coming to town to go to this Fort Lauderdale Colored School. Now, in 1924, when she was supposed to go to Fort Lauderdale Colored School, they had just built the first high school for Blacks in Broward County. It was the first time that a cement structure building was built as a public school for Blacks. And the school was under the leadership of Joseph Ely. Now, Professor Ely would later marry Blanche, but here they missed each other because she didn't go to that school because of the man who didn't want to go to Pompano. Now, the school would later become Dillard High School, the school that Dr. Ely was at. But later, Blanche would go and get a school named after her called Blanche Ely, and they would become rival schools. Like I said, there's so many twists of fates. She had turned away from what at the time was probably the most prestigious Black school in Broward County to go and teach at a rundown 1-room shack that she named the Juke Joint. I mean, the school she was going to play in Pompano, she called it the Juke Joint. And she called it the Juke Joint because in the evening and at times when school was out, the place was used as a social club, a place where adults could come and drink and just socialize. During her career as principal, she led the Pompano Beach Colored School from the Juke Joint to be an auxiliary in the Palmson's Church after the hurricane destroyed the Juke Joint. Then she moved it into a Rosewall School building that made it the pride of the Pompano Beach community. I mean, really the pride of the Pompano Beach community. And then it became the campus of Blanche Ely. Now, when it was that Rosenwald School, Blanche Ely was the major force behind getting Rosenwald Project, which was a national project that built African-American schools throughout the United States. There were about 5,000 schools and shops and teachers' homes that were built in that Rosenwald Project. And Blanche Ely was really the major force behind that. But what is interesting about that is this was a 6-room school. It had a library and an assembly hall. So, and this happened in 1928. So 4 years after she had skipped going to Dillard High School, which at the time was like the pride of Black schools in Broward County, she had built her own pride school, her own school that was almost equivalent to Dillard because it had 6 classrooms and it had 2 things that Dillard didn't have. it had a library, and it had an assembly hall in the school. So she had gone from this juke joint where she had stepped down from the best school that Broward County had to offer to Blacks at the time to actually leading the way to get the Rosenroll Project to get a school that was almost comparable to the school that she had left in Fort Lauderdale. Now, Miss Ely was the impetus behind many of projects that will bring in federal dollars and other dollars to help Pompano. She was the impetus in helping getting a housing project of school, the migrant workers of school. There were like 4 schools that she participated in that Pompano Beach area of getting their school buildings, and actually all during her career helping to lead those schools, helping to get them to get the teachers, the best education for those schools. But isn't it strange that this lady who was supposed to be a teacher under Dr. Ely in the 6th grade, not becoming that teacher, going to another area of the city, and then building a school that was comparable to the school he had there, and also ended up marrying him. Just as a short note, that school was then named Colored School, the Fort Lauderdale School was then called Colored School number 11, and it was Professor Ely who got the name changed to Dillard. So it was very interesting, that little twist of fate in that first thing, but I never saw that information that she was actually supposed to go to Fort Lauderdale Colored School, or what is now Dillard High School, before she actually went to Pompano. Now I want to talk a little bit about another thing, the thing that I said that kind of intrigued me. And this was about physical agility. Now, many people, when they think of sports, they think that they think of jocks, and they think that you're either going to be a smart person or you're going to be a jock. The jocks were not supposed to be smart. Well, Blanche and General Ely were staunch believers that physical and mental fitness walked hand in hand. So they believed that if you had physical abilities, if you had physical agility, that you should also have mental agility. So they kind of pushed their students to be physically fit because they thought it made the mind work better. They felt there was a correlation between your mental abilities and your physical abilities. So her players were often told that if you can jump fast or move high, or your brain works quick in the field, that your brain should also work quick in the classroom. It should work good on the other things in life. You should be able to be a good student because you are quick, you act precisely, and you can remember. All these things are things that should make you a good scholar, as well as being a good football player or a basketball player or whatever sport that you were involved in. So many of her players grew up with this attitude that if I'm good at sports, I should also be good at other classes that I have here. I should be good in mathematics. I should be good in science. I should be good in these other things because I have physical agility. Now, this led her in 1949 to actually start a girls' basketball team. And one of the reasons I mentioned this girls' basketball team, well, it's 2 reasons. The first reason I mention it is that in 1949, from talking to members of this girls' basketball team, they said that they played under the banner of Blanche Ely. Now, why that is very strange is because the school had not gotten the name of Blanche Ely yet. The official records show that it was not until 1952 that the school board agreed to call the school Blanche Ely. But in 1949, when she started this girls' basketball team, they called themselves Blanche Ely. They played for Blanche Ely. And in playing for Blanche Ely, the girls became a very good team. In fact, one of the things we found in the records was this picture of this girls' basketball team that was in 1949. And we thought first, wow, we now have a picture of that girls' basketball team that she started in 1949. To our surprise, that was not the girls' basketball team. That was a group of teachers. She took some teachers and formed them into a basketball team. And the teachers became a basketball team so that they could challenge the girls that she had in the school's basketball team. And that would challenge them and make them better at basketball. So the picture shows this group of young ladies, but they're not students. There's a picture of actual teachers who were playing basketball against the girl students to help them to be better players. Another picture that I found very interesting is the next year in 1950, she started a men's football team, but with the same attitude that if you are good at sports, you should be good at other things in life. At the end of it, she held a banquet with the football players, and it was a very plush banquet. She had them to dress up. She had them to get their dates. They had to come out and they sat with a full setting of silverware and dishes in front of them. And they came and they had an actual banquet for this first football team. So it showed that with those sports people, she was showing them that you should still be a gentleman and a scholar as well as being a good football player. And their football team has made them rank high throughout the years. And she had other sports. She just didn't stop at basketball and football. There are pictures that show that she had tennis teams. She had golf teams. She had many of the track and field teams. So she had the runners, the jumpers, and others. But when you talk to those who were a part of it, it was always instilling in them that you should be good at scholarly things as well as these sports things. And I think for students that was an eye-opener for me, because I was always used to saying when you say someone is a jock, that you don't really push them to be a scholar, to be good in scholarship. And she not only pushed them to be a scholar, she actually got them to say, you know, because I'm good at sports, I should be good at other things. Okay, so between 1970 and 1974, they closed down Ely High School. And they closed it down because of integration. And Blanche Ely, and when I say they closed it down to students. Because the other surprising thing about it is during those 4 years, Blanche Ely refused to close down the school. And she came to the school every day for those 4 years and petitioned that the school should be opened up because it was an accredited school, that its facility was stellar, that its educational program had been proven during those accreditations. In those accreditations, it showed that an outline for all of her studies that she had there. So she had an outline for her art program, an outline for her shop classes, outline for her social studies classes. There were outlines for all of these things in that accreditation, which showed that all of these things were helping the community as well as helping the students. So it showed that that Blanche Ely School was accredited and had a fine curriculum in it, but it was closed down. Now in 1975, after Blanche Ely had to retire, at that time there was a law that when a teacher became 70 years old, that she had to retire. And so Blanche Ely became 70 in 1974, had to retire. In 1975, they decided they were going to open Ely High School back up again. And the strange thing about that, of opening Dillard High School up again, is then they actually recognized that the Pompano School was not up to standard. So they actually closed down Pompano Beach High School and reopened Blanche Ely. Now, later they would come back and rebuild Pompano High School, but they kind of approved, and this was like a decision that really shocked the community, because you're going to close down the white school and you're going to reopen the black school. But that's exactly what happened, because they knew that what Blanche Ely had argued with that whole time, that the school was in better shape than the Pompano School. And again, this is very surprising when you're hearing about a school in the South, to hear that the black school in the community was in a better condition than the white school in the community. In fact, some of those who were arguing for the integration of the schools were saying that the black school was in better condition because Blanche Ely was putting too much pressure on the community, that she was getting private funds to help her to support the school, and that it really should be public funds that were giving the school this support. So Blanche Ely actually fought against integration because she said that the integration was actually going to give her less power to be able to get funds for her school. And when you look at what happened during that accreditation process, when you look at what happened because they actually closed down the white school because it was not up to the same standards of Blanche Ely, you see that there may have been some truth, that she was able to get the community support, the private support that she needed to make her school a great school. For the South, to me, that was very strange that you can have someone saying that the Black school in the area was actually getting better community support, better private support than the actual white school in the area. So like I said, there were these three things I found. Just because you now have this museum, just because they preserved the records of Blanche Ely and records of Mr. Ely, because he was living there too. They both lived in the house in Pompano, which has now become a museum. But I think when you look further into the records, and we've only started to skim the surface, there are still records that we have in there that are unprocessed. There are pictures in there that are unprocessed. And both of them were prolific writers. They were involved in many programs, getting a school program for the free lunch program for the school system in Broward County. There are letters of them writing for support to the president, to actors, to the Pope. So there are many of the records that are in there are fascinating records. And even the records of those accreditations, they still have the documents of when they were fighting for those accreditations, what the people who came in, and people came in from the state, people came in from other universities to study the community in the school. Those records are there. And I think there's a wealth of things to be learned about Blanche Ely and what you can do when you have the type of heart that believes that education should be for all.